Hello and welcome again to another episode of LCPtracker's E3 series, a virtual interview series where we engage, educate, and empower the construction community. Again, my name is Tanner Sabacco, and I'll be the host for today's show. And joining us will be DavisBacon, prevailing wage expert, and LCPtracker Director of Client Services, the lovely Alicia Taormina. Alicia, welcome aboard.
Hey, Tanner, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For those listeners who do not know, Alicia has quite the resume in the corporate side of construction with over 20 years worth of industry experience ranging from, payroll manager, business manager, compliance officer, and of course, topping it off, senior compliance manager working for a corporate office of a Fortune 200 prime contractor. All of this before coming to work for LCPtracker here. Alicia, tell us, is there anything that you cannot do?
I can't cook and I cannot make airplanes arrive on time.
Bummer. That would just make the world go round. Well, how about this? How about we start with you kind of walking us through a little bit of your journey that led you here to where you are today?
I think first I need to say, though, that I've been really, really fortunate and I've worked for some truly amazing companies in my career. But I have grandparents and parents who worked in construction. And so because of it, I grew up around it and I tried really hard to stay out of it. But I found that it's where I fit and where I felt at home working. So for many years, I was what is considered a business manager, which, is basically everything. You do everything in an office, right? Help the engineers, help the project managers, help the clients. And while I truly enjoyed the organizational part of it and the accounting and the HR aspect of it, I felt more drawn to the compliance side of things. Rules and regulations just make sense to me. That being said, though, I've run across a lot of people who would sooner, gouge their eyes out with a fork than try to produce a certified payroll report or understand how to really comply with workforce reporting requirements. Luckily, those came easy for me, and it does not hurt that I really enjoyed being in the field and watching all the work be built.
Now, I'm sure working as a contractor all those years, you've seen it all, whether it's federal prevailing wage, whether it's even state-specific compliance. But for those listeners who might be new to public works construction, maybe you can just break it down for us. What exactly is DavisBacon and how does it apply to construction?
Sure. Well, DavisBacon is a federal prevailing wage law. It requires an hourly wage and fringe rate be paid to construction workers who work on covered projects. How those construction projects become covered work is determined by whether or not they receive any federal funding assistance. And I know that answer sounds really super simple, and I'm sure you're thinking, well, gosh, that's easy to comply with, but it's truly much more complicated in reality.
Oh, ain't that the truth? Sooner or later, everyone does. They sort of figure that out. I'm assuming with your experience on the contractor side of the coin, you've seen your fair share of things go wrong on prevailing wage projects. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Well, never on my projects.
Of course, yes.
But, of course. No, I've definitely seen things.
So tell us then, how bad does it get?
Oof. How bad can it get? Let's just say that every time I shake my head and see, okay, now I've seen it all, then I, run across another situation that says, well, I was wrong. Now I've seen it all. First example, really easy one that pops in my head was visiting a project where nobody knew that prevailing wage was even required. And I know there's folks listening going, oh, how could you not know? Believe it or not, it's not common, first of all, but it can happen. I mean, if you're working for a client who typically does private work and, doesn't even know how to spell prevailing wage or doesn't know that it's a thing, how do they know that it's required, right? In this particular case, it was a tax break that made, or rather, should I say, triggered DavisBacon requirements. And then I think, like I said, that one wasn't common, but something that's probably more common, more common than those of us in construction would like to admit, is the one thing that makes every compliance officer go, and that's the lower tier subcontractor who manages to fly right under the radar and avoids detection. So I'm not talking about that second tier. I'm talking about the fourth, fifth, sixth tier subcontractor who maybe didn't get all the pertinent information from the folks that they're working for, and they just don't know that they have to comply, and you somehow miss them. And I know, again, sometimes folks think that, gosh, there's no way you don't know everybody on your project site. And in theory, yeah, in a perfect world, but think about the projects that are 25 miles long. You don't have a badge in, badge out on projects like that. And so sometimes it's, how do you, sitting in an office, how do you know who's 25 miles down the road, right? Or if you're building a giant building and you have thousands of employees working, is it possible that somebody manages to slip through the cracks? I mean, if we're being realistic, yeah, it can happen.
I'm sure it does. And Alicia, you kind of alluded to this, but working as a prime contractor, you have this unique experience of not only having to oversee the compliance for the company that you work for, all of the employees that they hire, the workers on the construction site, but in addition to that, you have to ensure all of the subcontractors are compliant as well with all of their workers. Why is that?
But prime contractors, because of the DavisBacon regulations, they are obligated to ensure that their subcontractors comply with prevailing wages. Of course, there's other, rules and regulations they have to comply with as well, but it's a really tall order, especially if you're managing your prevailing wage compliance program on paper instead of an electronic solution. And mind you, I've done both. So I'm not just saying that because I work for LCPtracker. I'm saying that because I've done it. I've managed a really large compliance program on paper, and I've managed it in an electronic solution. But there's room for mistakes. And if, we're all human. And so we don't want to assume that the folks that we're dealing with, the companies we're dealing with, are unscrupulous or looking for ways to steal. I personally hope that they just don't know any better, and they need to be educated when it comes to these type of topics.
Alicia, do you think that some of the bigger mistakes that you've seen subcontractors make could have been avoided if they had simply had properly trained compliance staff? Is that an issue that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting question. I had a trainer many, many years ago at the beginning of my career who is what you call a compliance cop, right? They took a great deal of pleasure in writing people up on projects or failing that project for audits. And it really taught me, while it taught me a lot, it also taught me what I didn't want to do with my career. And when I got to take my turn at that position, and I wanted to make sure I trained people, I wanted to help them and set them up for success. And so I truly think that these kind of issues and most compliance issues can be avoided if you train your staff properly.
Alicia, what are a few of the topics of prevailing wage compliance that you find contractors tend to have the most trouble with?
Off the top of my head, apprentices, trucking, and misclassification. Those are my top three, and they've shockingly been my top three for probably 6 or 7 years at this point. I truly believe that each one of them would be much easier to comply with if they were properly explained.
I'm glad you brought that up, Alicia, because that's one of the many reasons why I was super excited to have you on the show today. We discussed this in one of our previous interviews as well with Deborah Wilder about California prevailing wage. And we talked about how big, especially in this industry, how big education is. You mentioned if someone doesn't have these kind of compliance issues properly explained to them, all kinds of problems arise, right? And as you and I both know, LCPtracker has created an on-demand platform called LCPtracker Academy, where industry professionals can go and take classes online and learn about all of these things. And of course, everyone here listening should know that ours truly, Alicia, as our in-house expert on federal prevailing wage, you're the instructor who put together the learning plan for the DavisBacon program, the certification that people can earn by taking this DavisBacon program. I thought I'd give you just a second, if you'd like, to share a little bit about what's included in your program.
Sure. And I'd like to claim it as my program, but to be fair, it's a team effort, right? So it takes a village to complete something as ambitious as LCPtracker Academy, and I think we all really had a hand in it. But some of the topics were wage determinations, conformances, apprentices, of course, trucking, executive orders, site of work, and classifications, misclassification. So there's a few more, but each of these individual courses then dive into the topic that's mentioned. So our attendees are then prompted to take some quizzes within the module, just to make sure they're following along and paying attention. And then after you've completed all the courses, you take a final exam. And once you pass that, then you receive a certification from LCPtracker.
Alicia, you cover a lot in your courses. It's just packed with more than just the 20 plus years of experience and expertise you gained in working in the industry as a contractor and a prime contractor. I learned so much more myself, maybe even more than I wanted to learn about DavisBacon, watching all of your videos and compiling everything into LCPtracker Academy. I can tell anyone with confidence that they will grasp the fundamentals of DavisBacon and all the regulations that come along with it by taking your courses. And look, that's about all the time we have for the show today. So I do have to wrap things up. I wanted to thank you so much for joining and taking the time out of your day. I loved having you and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for your kind words, Tanner. And as always, thanks for allowing me to be part of it.